for a number of years, and I did a lot of work in economic development back in the time when I was a mayor. That the fact that we had one of the largest business parks in the state of Michigan for a state of our size. So we did a lot of work of business recruitment and development, and so I'm very familiar with a lot of the issues that I have some perspective on. But you know, I wanted really to hear from the local communities what their thoughts were about what we could be doing for economic development as a legislator, and also in the U.S. government, what kinds of things we could be doing to make the economic environment better for people that are trying to make a living wage and how to be able to raise a family successfully in this tough economic time. Also, I do have 3 children that are young adults that are all in school, so I'm obviously very interested in the ability to have solid education, not only K-12, pre-K, but also higher education. I think in the 21st century, that's a very important part of having good paying jobs, which is one of the things that we really have a challenge with in this country right now, is with wage stagnation. I think some of you have experienced that, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that also. And my original career, I got a BS in accounting, my CPA, and got my MBA back in, we were talking a little bit about that. I got my MBA at George Washington University back in, let's see, that was a while ago. But so I do have a business background, and when I was mayor in Saline, I was also a commercial realtor because I had a lot of familiarity with some of the government side, which is, you know, land use planning, zoning, how to help businesses be stronger in the community in Saline, and I felt like I could really bring something to the table for businesses that were trying to grow in not only Saline, but all of Washington County and the state of Michigan. So I do have my Michigan Realtor's license. I think that's pretty broad brush on my background.
I'm Ken Fletcher, the Delta Township Supervisor. In my 2nd term now, so I've been in office for 6 years. And economic development has kind of been one of the focuses during the time period I've been here. I took office right after the economic collapse of 2008. So came in at, some have joked, came in at the worst possible time. All the good times, all the growth that had been going on for, you know, years in advance there suddenly came to a halt. We went from having 150 or more new houses a year built Delta to having 0 built in 2009. So there was a pretty dramatic slowing down of the economy. And we all know what was going on with the auto industry during that time period as well. Well, the auto industry is still the basis of our economy here. We have a General Motors plant, which we're very proud of and very glad to have located here. It's the newest plant that's part of the GM system, so we think it's fantastic that it's here. But you know, at the time of 2009, when GM was heading towards bankruptcy, no one knew whether or not they were even going to survive, whether or not they were even going to be around. And then you take all the spin-off that's tied to that GM plant, the auto parts suppliers that are located in our township that were all starting to struggle during that time period. And we saw some of those suppliers go under and close during that time period. And then that kind of spun throughout the community. You start seeing empty storefronts down the Saginaw Highway commercial corridor because if folks don't have jobs and people are starting to leave the area, then they're not spending money at their neighborhood stores, at the gas station, grocery store, whatever, and you start seeing that impact come into play. We saw it play out in housing in terms of foreclosures started to go through the roof of the township like it did in a lot of places across the state of Michigan. Vacancy rates, people who needed to sell their house but couldn't sell their house. And I already said the building came to a halt because nobody was looking to build new houses. So a lot of energy and a lot of time went into how do we turn this around? Because if you have your economy going down in that direction, what's going to happen to your township budget at that time as well? The revenue is going to steadily go as housing values and revenue started to decline during that time period. So we just turned the corner. You know, 6 years later, this year's budget is the first year where we're starting to go down back in the positive direction as opposed to continually declining in terms of revenue up until this point. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that, you know, it's over with. We're only going to see things continue to go in the right direction from this point forward. But there's been a lot of good things that have happened to get us here. We've seen things, you know, turn around in terms of new investment in the General Motors plant, new investment of auto suppliers that are moving to the area to service that plant. We're seeing businesses and stores and restaurants starting to come back to the Saginaw corridor, but there's a lot of work to be done. So we'll talk about some of the things hopefully during this program that can be done to help make sure that this area stays a great, strong, viable place to come live, raise your family.
My name's John Haneski. I'm an economist. I'll confess to that right up front. My background is I've got a PhD in economics from Purdue, I'm former chief economist for the Michigan Department of Commerce, back when we had a Department of Commerce. I'm currently the president of Economics Consulting Services by Little Business, Consulting Business. And I've been a very active member of the Michigan Economic Developers Association for many years now. I am an honorary life member of the MEDA, Michigan Economic Developers Association, and I've received the President's Award and the Mike Conway Award for Outstanding Service to the Profession. So I'm pretty heavily into the economic development industry, if you will. I wanted to make a few comments about incentives and inducements to business. There's been a lot of discussion lately about that. I use the analogy to getting a date for the prom. I mean, there are two models you can use. You can say, I'll give you 20 bucks if you go to the prom with me. The other approach is go to the salon and get a nice haircut, something fashionable, something nice and neat. Take a bath so you don't stink. Clean up, get rid of the hamburger wrappers and the coffee cups cluttering up the car. Vacuum it out. Use a little Windex. Take it through a car wash. Put some polish on it. So that when you're done with that effort, and maybe it costs you 20 bucks to do all of that, even if the individual that you are initially seeking to have go to the prom with you decides that they'd rather go with somebody else, you're in a position to be able to attract someone else to be your date for the prom. That principle applies when you're talking about economic development on a state or a local level. The early founders of the township back in the late 1950s designated 1,600 acres of land for industrial purposes. It's got mixed use in there, but nevertheless, they had the foresight to see that if you don't have a place at which business can do its business, you're not even in the contest. Now the state has got a certified business park program that establishes certain criteria that must be met in terms of zoning, platting, utilities, power, communications, transportation connections, etc. The township has made significant investments in this area of making itself attractive. And it pays off. The most recent major expansion is Meyer Distribution Center and Warehouse down in our industrial estate. 50 acres, 500,000 square foot expansion, a couple of thousand more jobs. Why does that happen? Did it happen because we said, here's 20 bucks and go to the prom with me? No, it's because the township and the region has been working on making itself an attractive place at which to do business. One example, maybe 2 years ago, there's a business, D&K Trucking. They sales and service of trucks, pretty significant trucks. They were looking at a parcel on the periphery of our industrial estate. And at that time, there was a requirement that they were going to put in a major investment in a sidewalk on what is basically industrial area with virtually no residential anywhere in the neighborhood. The township looked at the situation and agreed that a variance would be a reasonable thing. It wouldn't hurt any of our residents, and it would make it a more economically viable project for this business to be able to locate and expand in our community. So when all is said and done, you're looking at economic development and incentives and inducements, you have to ask yourself the question, who's it for? It's easy to get captured by these industries. Look at the coal miners in West Virginia and the inspectors that are supposed to keep those guys safe. What happens? The inspectors get captured by the industry. In economic development, we don't want that to happen. We want to keep our focus. This is for the community, and when we're done with what we're doing, the community is going to be better off with or without that particular investment we're trying to attract. So that's my little speech and background on my view of this whole question of inducements and incentives for business.
Well, thanks, you guys. And kind of going off of what you just mentioned, John, kind of what can be done to motivate investments in our local economy? You had hit on, with incentivizing some other things from anyone up here. What can be done to help motivate the investment in the local economy?
One of the things is you rebuild Saginaw Highway. Make it easier for people to transit, to enter business locations, make it more attractive, put up banners to identify yourself as a community, as a destination. Working individually with the businesses, you identify what it is that they really need. I use the example of this trucking company that had an issue about getting a variance in terms of putting in a sidewalk where it really wasn't necessary. Sometimes it involves getting some help with curb cuts. You have to deal with the state agencies like MDOT. Sometimes it may be labor force training. We're very fortunate to have an LCC campus here in the township, and they are very receptive to working with business to do the kind of particular training we need. So it tends to be very particular, and I just do not believe that you appropriate $2.5 million and say, here's a blank check, please go to the prom with me.
As far as how you help, the local economy grow, as part of it, a big part of it, I think, is placemaking. A big part of attracting businesses and keeping the businesses you have is to make sure that you have the population there, and you make sure you have the population, and you make sure that you have people who want to live there and work there, and the talent pool that those employers are going to start looking for by investing in quality of life issues in your community. And that's one of the things that we've tried to focus on here in Delta. John mentioned as far as some of the work that we've done as far as along Saginaw Highway corridor, as far as the banners and things that we've put up to try to create that sense of community, creating, putting in place the pathways, the east-west pathway that we put in that has been really popular, connecting that pathway to the park system through different sidewalks and paths, so that people can get from park to park, from the library parks around the township without using their cars, and kids can go safely. People don't think of that as being an economic development tool, but that's really what it's all about. By creating an environment that's going to attract the young families to come in and stay in the township, that you're going to bring in the workers that the employers are looking for. One of the biggest things that impact where a business is going to locate is whether or not they can find the talent that they need to staff their business. Number one thing, that's more important than taxes or anything else. It's having the talent pool available. And if you don't have the talent pool, well, it doesn't matter what inducements or enhancements you're trying to offer them in order to get somebody to come to your area. They're just not going to come. And being part of the capital region, we have Michigan State University, we have Cooley Law School, we have LCC, we're all graduating young, educated professionals every single year. And to make our region strong, we need to keep them here. We can't just graduate them and then send them back to wherever they came from to start with. We got to convince them, hey, stay here. You know, we need you in our community. We need you to be available. You know, in Delta Township, we have a business, Liquid Web, which is exactly the type of businesses of the new economy that you want to have come in. They're a web hosting, cloud computing business. They've been growing by leaps and bounds. The fact of the matter is, though, they're really running into problems finding the talent that they need. They're expanding in other areas now because they pretty much feel they kind of saturated this market in terms of the, you know, the high-tech, you know, well-educated young folks that they need to work there. And we need to, if we're going to continue to thrive in this economy, we need to make sure that we can keep them here. And they're not going to, you know, I know, and it's tough when you're competing with Chicago and places like that. That's a little more exciting than, you know, Delta Township. But, you know, I think that there's things that we can do to make this more attractive. And a big part, too, of economic development is thinking regionally. We need to look at the region as a whole. We all can't be little islands trying to do our own thing. We all need to be working together to promote the region as a whole. And by focusing on different segments of the population, our whole region can grow together. You know, we may not necessarily in Delta Township, you know, get the folks who are just graduated from college who wants to live in a loft in a downtown environment, who have, you know, entertainment options that they can walk to. But, you know, a couple years later, they're going to want to, you know, possibly get married. They will want to, you know, put down roots and stuff. Then we want them to come start looking at Delta Township as a place to come to raise your family and to, you know, put down those roots and have good schools and everything. So we can all grow by, you know, offering something to everybody in different parts of in the region. Because, you know, as, you know, I always say, if Lansing got a new factory, I'm going to benefit because some of those workers are going to live in Delta Township. And if we get a new factory in Delta, other parts of the region is going to benefit too, because there will be that spill off and stuff. So, you know, those are just a few of the things.
Well, I would totally agree. Coming from the mayor's point of view, placemaking was a very important part of a lot of the work that we did. And, you know, as we start, I was talking earlier about places for community coming together. We started a farmer's market back when I first became mayor, and that was a really great way to bring the community together, support the local economy with the local farmers coming in, the children learning better eating habits, right, because they're seeing the food fresh from the farmer that grew it. And it also created, you know, an economic engine there in the downtown area. But we did a lot of work with placemaking, so much so that when I started as a state representative last year, I worked with a couple other representatives on both sides of the aisle to start a placemaking initiative, a bipartisan caucus. We call it the Talent Caucus. Back to your, you know, talk about it is really important to have people. You know, my experience as mayor, people came to Saline because we had a really great school system and we had a really great quality of life. And number one, it was the school system that we had, you know, and that's what we really need to be able to do is invest in our public education and have an excellent school system. I know that's really important to Delta Township. But so that is, and so we had it last term and we did a few things. But this term we're working with the Sense of Place Council, which is actually a constituency group of stakeholders from like Michigan Association of Realtors to the MTA to MISHDA. I mean, it's quite, there's like 25 different organizations. And we just had our most recent meeting and we were really talking a lot about, you know, business needs talent and talent wants place. So business needs place. So it's like a circular, it's very much of a system. And so we're really working on different ideas for how to, you know, really address placemaking and talent recruitment and help businesses because they're all very integrated. And as you guys both mentioned, I think they're both really, really important. We did, last term I was on Commerce Committee, we did some interesting legislation called the MILE legislation, which is the local investor, the opportunity to invest in local businesses. That's pretty unique nationally. And we haven't had it adopted as much around the state, so we're trying to identify ways that we could help more local communities. Because it is true that local people invest in local businesses that tends to get more dollars. You would know this as an economist, gets more dollars back in the community. So if you go to your local business and spend money, you're more likely to have that money continue to go through your economy versus going outside. So I think that's also a really important thing that folks should try to recognize.
So moving kind of from Rep. Driskell's government point of view, how can government and business in the business community best work together to help working families. And anyone can start if you want.
Okay. Well, you got to keep lines of communication open. One of the organizations that we have is the Delta Side Business Group. That is, it's kind of a quasi-chamber of commerce kind of thing, but it also includes representatives from the township. I know that Ed Reed, who is our economic development coordinator, attends regularly. We have members on the Economic Development Corporation Board who are very active in the Delta side. And it's this back and forth communication. Our Economic Development Coordinator made somewhere around 30 individual calls on business and 70 some odd site visits last year. It's going out and saying, I'm here, I want to hear what you've got to say, and keeping that line of communication open. If you just stay in your office and shut the door and only talk to like people, I only talk to bureaucrats, I don't talk to those business people. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. So you've got to have outreach and communication.
I agree with what Jen said. As far as what, government and business can do to work together, I think that one of the biggest things we can do is to have government take care of the things that are responsible for taking care of it and to do it well, and that helps the businesses. On one front, we try to make sure in Delta Township that we have a very friendly environment in terms of working with businesses from the point of view. Our inspectors and people of that nature who are in the business of following and enforcing codes and everything. Our job, we don't view it as our job is to go out kind of as bureaucrats to say we're just here to enforce a rule and we're going to give you a citation if you're not following the rule. The whole idea is we're here to protect the health and safety of the community. So as a result, when we go out and interact with businesses, that's our priority. So we want to work with the businesses to help them do what they are trying to do, but do it in a way that's going to make sure it protects the health and safety. So we try to work with businesses and not just go in with this, mindset of we're looking to write people up. We're looking to help them figure out, okay, what do you need to do to accomplish what you're trying to do as a business, while at the same time making sure it's done right that's going to protect our residents. So having that kind of philosophy and realizing that businesses are very important to the community and working with them is important. But then I think the other, probably even bigger piece that government can do, local government can do, state government can do to help work with businesses is to provide the things that we talk about. Gretchen mentioned education. We talked about the workforce, that the businesses are needing to find. Well, one of the most important things we can do to help businesses is make sure we have good schools, make sure that we're adequately funding public education, and then make sure that we're giving the teachers in the classroom the resources that they need to get their job done. That's one of the biggest things that we can do to help businesses. Not give them some tax cut or incentive, but making sure that they have good quality schools in every community so that they can find the workforce that they need to do. Another thing that government can do to help businesses is to have good roads. That's a very important piece of economic development, is having roads that won't destroy your vehicles when you're driving on them, and make it so you can get your product to your customers. So having government make sure that we fix those roads finally and do it in a way that's not a Band-Aid approach, but an approach that's going to last for a while, is very important. So I think at the end of the day, government needs to do its job. And if we do our job and takes care of the things that we're responsible for, then that will help grow businesses and help them thrive.
I would totally agree, and I think one infrastructure piece that we haven't talked about yet that I heard when I was mayor, when I was a commercial realtor, I actually had people move in from more rural areas and will have to open an office for like a single business because they couldn't access internet, broadband, and I'm still having that problem as a state legislator. That was one of the first calls I got from a constituent in Western Washtenaw County. A lot of my residents aren't able to get broadband in their homes, and to the point where it's also affecting public education because the children in one of our school districts get iPads. When in kindergarten, can you imagine your 5-year-old first day of school going in, getting an iPad, getting to use it at school, and then coming home and plugging it in and it won't go on. I mean, can you imagine how, like, the poor child and the parents? So we've been working really hard, and the same thing, partnering with the business and government to build a market study. There's a group called Connect Michigan that's been working with counties around the state to identify where these big gaps are and really help. So we've been working with partnering with business and some of the government and libraries in Washington County, my district, and trying to figure out ways to get, to help, you know, as you said, partner with the business and find ways to help them provide the internet service. Also, it's a home-based business. It's one of the fastest growing business sectors, and a lot of people are working out of their home now. So that's another really important way to make sure that they are able to work, you know, get their business out of their home. And I know that it's a property value issue, and also with a lot of medical care, a lot of more people are wanting to stay in their home as they age, and medical care, a lot of that's going through the computer nowadays. So it's really important, I think, that we continue to address that and make sure that we're providing the right kind of broadband level of service. There is some service that's being provided, but the data caps are so low that really it's not helpful for somebody that has more than one user in their home, or I've had a couple of constituents that had to move because they weren't able to do their job at home when they were, you know, staying at home. So I think that's a big issue too.
You mentioned, if I could, on that issue of broadband. In the back of the room is County Commissioner Joe Brailer. When Joe Brailer was chairman of the Eaton County Board of Commissioners, that was an issue that he was actively promoting. How do we have universal broadband access throughout Eaton County? It was putting a lot of attention and energy into finding a solution to that to expend it. But I don't think now, since the other party took control, it's kind of been an issue that's been dropped, and I don't think it's a focus. And unless there's something going on, Joe, that I don't know about, but I don't think that they made it a priority. So something like that, that's, you know, essential to growing a lot of businesses, especially those entrepreneurs and home-based businesses that you mentioned, and absolutely nothing's being done. And you know, it was a priority where we were making some good headway in trying to find, you know, find the solutions on, you know, how can you make that happen. So it's sad to see that something like that was totally dropped.
It's also a lot of retailers now also have, we did some interesting things, because we also had, we were fortunate, the previous leadership in Saline had a business park like you were talking about, not quite as big, because we're not a township, we were a city, but we did have an industrial park, and some people wanted to be able to do internet out of their, you know, out of the business park, the warehousing piece, and then we changed the zoning to just have a small portion of that so they could sell, but not like as a retail store, but as a sort of a front for what they did on the internet. And I think if we had better broadband service, one of the things Connect Michigan does, and you should probably meet with them, they actually work with businesses to develop a web presence. So retailers, obviously, in order to be competitive nowadays, we need to have an internet presence a lot of times too. At a minimum, just have a presence, but you know, even sometimes they're selling on the internet. So I think that's also could be beneficial. So Connect Michigan. I'm a really big fan because they've been working really hard on increasing access all over the state.
Okay, so next question, then I'll start with you, Gretchen, if you'd like. What legislation do you see coming down the pipeline that could help small businesses, working families, help develop the economy? And if you guys can't speak to legislation, just, you know, what your expertise is. So is there anything kind of coming down the pipeline that's been actively, you know, being put, or anything that you've been working on?
Well, I've been working on tax credit for small businesses that work with the folks that are in the military reserve, that they go and they're called to duty, that there's a federal initiative to allow a tax credit to equalize the pay for if they go, you know, overseas, then they would have an opportunity to have that, still have the same pay level as if they left town. Other than that, I think just in general, we're working on some placemaking. I think that will really help business. My experience in as a mayor and doing economic development, really, I mean, actually when I campaigned a very long time ago for city council, I campaigned on downtown revitalization. Our downtown was pretty slow at the time. It really needed a lot of investment, and we've been very fortunate to have some really good investment in that community because of our schools and because we had the right kind of partnerships, I think, is really what we need to be doing. So I think it's just, there's legislation. I think the other piece, though, that's almost more important is making sure we don't over-legislate, because I do think there are opportunities when we over-legislate too, so there needs to be some balance there. And work with businesses, like you mentioned, having the balance with making sure that the guidelines are